Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough, and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
I am so excited about our interview today. This is someone that is so intriguing and interesting, and we have been, I'll just say his music and his lyrics have changed the world.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about for our listeners to get to hear from our guest today. But before we get into the interview, I want to ask you a question kind of based on what he talks about. Ron, what was your or is your favorite hymn?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Favorite hymn. First of all, I got to disclose, as our listeners probably know, if you've been listening a long time, I'm not a musical person, but I love music. So I get to love it when nobody else is around if I'm going to be singing out loud. I definitely have one, and it's been there for a very long time. It is A Mighty Fortress.
Oh,
A Mighty Fortress. It's written by Martin Luther. He was imprisoned in sort of this dungeon type room where he could peek out of this window and see this castle there in Germany across the way. And this castle looked so strong. And he began to write this set of lyrics, thinking and comparing the metaphor of that strong bulwark of a masterpiece being so strong in the storms, comparing it to his God.
wow.
And so I just love it. I mean, it's probably the oldest hymn in one's hymn book. It goes back to 1529.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's definitely public domain. We were just discussing that off the air. So, but yeah, that's mine. What about yours?
I love it. Well, this one's now, remember, part of my story is I wasn't raised in the church. So my introduction to church was in my teenage years.
Yes.
And so, but this hymn was actually played in my wedding. We had a time of worship in our actual wedding service.
Nice.
And so it's Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Oh, that's an awesome one.
Just turns my heart back to the faithfulness of God and remembering who He is and how present He is. And, the thing I love about hymns is it just feels like they were written so long ago, but they are still so true of God even today.
Yes, without a doubt. Now, I will confess to our listeners, and if you're wondering, like, man, where are these guys going today with hymns? Is this something I need to just skip past? You do not. And I'm thankful if you're listening. You already know who we're talking about because you saw the name when you click the link. But man, you said it well. Their music has changed. I mean, is it not the number one song played at funerals today? I mean, I've conducted a number as a minister, and families are constantly still requesting that item, and it's, I still do a handful of funerals from people I know and so forth. And I know Chad's probably done the same thing.
Yes.
Marianne.
Oh, my 16-year-old son in 2022, 2023, he loves I Can Only Imagine. And he loves the story of MercyMe. I'm telling you, he's like, that song is going with me forever. And so that's the power that this is how remarkably this worship band, Christian band has changed the world with their lyrics.
Definitely so.
Well, I'm so excited about this interview. And so listeners, get ready to hear this incredible, and just so you know, our interviewer asks some remarkable questions of Bart. So you're going to learn some things about Bart that I don't think most of us knew.
I agree. David's a great interviewer. Love him.
He is. And he asked some great questions. So we're going to go to the interview and we will dialogue a little bit on the other side.
My guest today is no stranger to you. His life was the focus of the feature film I Can Only Imagine, and for 28 years, he's been the voice of MercyMe, picking up multiple Grammy nominations, Billboard Awards, Dove Awards, and so much more. MercyMe is back with its 11th studio album called Always Only Jesus, and today we have the privilege of talking about it with the one and only Bart Millard. Bart, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So 28 years, that is impressive in any industry, especially the music industry. But I got to wonder, do you remember your first concert with MercyMe, even if you weren't called MercyMe at the time? And I'm not talking like studio label concert, but like your first overall concert that you did.
Yeah, 100%. We, our first show ever was at a military missionary youth camp in the Swiss Alps in Switzerland, in Grindelwald, Switzerland. We were called over to this group of people, went over to kind of run this church camp for these kids all over Europe that are American missionaries or military. And the first time we ever called ourselves MercyMe was leading worship that week for about 200 kids in the most scenic place you could ever imagine. And so, yes, I mean, if it was anywhere else, I may not remember, but that one I'll never forget.
Yeah, I mean, that starts your career kind of on a peak.
It was all downhill from there. Yeah.
Wow. Well, talking about a little more current day, your previous album, Inhale, Exhale, which was a tremendous album, it released about a year and a half ago. I'm curious, like, what's the process of finishing one album and essentially turning the page and starting to focus on something new?
Well, I feel like we lost track of time because of the pandemic. Like, everything feels like it's either 20 years ago or 2 days ago, depends on what it is. But it's technically our record contract says we put out an album every 18 to 24 months. So this album is right at 18 months. So I guess we're on time, but it feels like we just put one out. And, but yeah, it was, this thing was supposed to be an EP around the song Then Christ Came. That was going to be the next single with whatever was next after Inhale Exhale. We thought we'd start there because, it's all about singles and playlists. And so making albums, we're one of the few that still believe in it, but most people just want to hear a song. So we were going on that road and then realized we couldn't. We kept writing songs. And so the EP became a full album. And so half of it's kind of left over. We wrote about 30 or 40 songs from Inhale Exhale. And so we trying to figure out what to do with some of those, but then just kept writing. And so half are left over, half are new. And what ended up being like, well, let's just make it a full album. Why not? We're already here. Became, just because the timing and everything, to me, one of the most important albums we've ever done because of, it's the fact that it's called Always Only Jesus. The fact that every song it's not about clever lyrics or trying to do something creatively we've never done. Like, it feels like what MercyMe's done for years. And it's trying to, the body of Christ has been so divided lately that we feel like that our contribution, this whole thing, is to try to unify the body any way we possibly can. And the common denominator has to be Jesus. I grew up Southern Baptist next to a Methodist church, so we could definitely disagree on things. But if you're both pursuing Jesus and trying to honor the heart of God, I'm okay with that. And so it may seem like throwing a pebble in an ocean for us, but if on this tour and everything going on, if for an hour and a half or so we can get people to agree on at least that thing, then it feels like it's just needed more than ever.
Yeah. And as I was listening through your new album, Always Only Jesus, I was really moved by its focus on hope, forgiveness, and grace. But frankly, all signs point to Jesus with your songs. And it's really incredible. When you're creating a new album, is that something you set out to do from the start intentionally? Or is that something that happens organically and you kind of notice later on, like, wow, this all has a similar theme?
Maybe and in both. I mean, a lot of times, like Inhale Exhale, I would say was one of the more creative things we've done because we had so much time just to do random stuff. And so instead of writing another Even If, we wanted to do a disco song with Gloria Gaynor and loved it. And so And so that was just kind of like, man, we've got so much time. Let's just see where it takes us. And so we were intentional on just being open to whatever came out and however we tried to write lyrically and stuff. This one, we were sitting on these songs and they were all pointing to Jesus, just black and white. Like, man, it's funny because our label was like, they made a suggestion, y'all should do a worship album because, worship's a big deal right now. And I was like, man, I feel like we've been in worship albums for 28 years. Like, to call it a worship album is almost kind of like, we're not jumping on a bandwagon. These are the God with us and all of creation stuff we've done for years. And so, but it was definitely, it was pointing so much to Christ. And so that part we weren't intentionally doing it, but when we saw that we had these stack of songs that were doing that, the other half that we wrote was very intentional to keep that theme and go, yes, let's keep this going. And then to literally wrote the song Always Only Jesus near the end, knowing that that's going to be the title of the album. Like, let's, that's the perfect title and let's keep this thing rolling. And so yeah, there was some of it wasn't planned, but once we started seeing a pattern, it was like, oh, we got to close this out, man. We got to finish this.
That's very cool. Is there a particular song on the album that really means more to you than others? I know they're probably all like your babies, but is there one that just really stands out for you as just a personal love?
Yeah. Nothing But the Blood, the last song on the album, is really special to me. One, because I don't actually enjoy writing lyrics because I usually have to go to a dark place to do that because I lament. And so I love the result, but I hate revisiting painful things to bring something out of it. And so that song's written. It's an old hymn that we redid. And so I didn't have to stress with that. So going into it creatively was a blast because that's one to where, a lot of times you get producers and we get, we'll add loops and stuff that we're not playing just to kind of beef it up and make it like a pop song. Well, that was just the five of us, walking around this room with a mallet trying to find a kick drum sound on the couch or whatever. And it felt like back in the day we had no budget trying to be super creative. And so everything you hear is the five of us. And I love that about it because sometimes when you have the money to spend, you spend it and you find easier ways to find sounds. And I'm like, no, man, we might be able to find a kick drum online, but we're going to create it right here. And so that part I loved about it and loved how it turned out because we wanted just something that sounded just like, this is the most beautiful thing we can make right now is what it felt like. And then also my mom passed away in July this year. We'd already recorded that song, but in August we were listening to the final mix and my brother had sent me a text telling me that he found this book of questions that we had given her 15 years ago, trying to capture memories like, what was your first date like? These things, just have them record them. And one of them was like, what's your favorite song? And she wrote, if it's Bart, it's I Can Only Imagine. If it's not him, it's Nothing But the Blood of Jesus. Had no idea. Wow. And the song was already done. I'm listening to the final mix. I'm just in tears because, sometimes the pressure of, fans mean well, but my mom died. Somebody's like, oh, I bet you're going to write a great song out of that. I'm like, well, not now because that's just weird. But, but there is a weird, they just assume that because you have to imagine whatever. And so I wasn't planning on doing that. But the fact that it was kind of providential that it was already in place and this beautiful song for her it was a moment for me of oh man, it kind of took care of itself in a way. And so, yeah, so that one's incredibly special to me.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking to Bart about this new album.
D6 curriculum is centered on the discipleship philosophy found in Deuteronomy 6, that parents and grandparents should be primary in the discipleship of their children. To accomplish this, D6 curriculum aligns every age in church on the same biblical passage or topic. Family alignment serves as a catalyst for parents to have conversations with their children about faith in the home. D6 also provides many other tools to help parents and grandparents. Learn how D6 curriculum can empower parents in your ministry at d6family.com.
We are back, and we're talking to Bart Millard of MercyMe and talking about their brand new album, Always Only Jesus. Now, Bart, we mentioned at the top that MercyMe has been at this for almost 30 years, which is really amazing. That's older than I am. That's a lie. Not true. But how has your approach to songwriting and the industry changed since the early days of the band?
It's changed like 100 times. It feels like, we started when, it's all about the $18.99 CD or whatever. And then Napster shows up and downloading and the crisis of how we're going to overcome that. And then I became all about buying digital downloads from, iTunes. And then as quick as that started, streaming came in. I think that thing lasted less than 5 years and people just weren't buying downloads anymore. It's all about streaming. And it's evolved so much to where making albums is a challenge because everybody's about a single on some playlist and the attention span is definitely shortened. We're still about doing albums and we probably always will be, but it has changed drastically and some ways amazing. And the fact that music's getting to the fan faster than ever, I think is an awesome thing. Some things are hard and frustrating. Like, you finish making an album and then the amount of content they want you to build for social media to stay present is more work and more hours than making the album. And so at some point you're like, and you've got younger guys like my teenage son or my 20-year-old son who's doing music. He doesn't know any different. And so just part of the game to where we're like, man, it used to be you finish an album and you go on tour and then you take a break. Well, now it's like you finish the album and then you're a car salesman. It feels like from that point on, just trying to stay relevant and there's part of us that's like, we've got our limits. Like we'll do it for a little bit, but it's like, we just love making music so much that it's like, we'll probably keep doing this. We'll give them a few things every once in a while. But for the first time I said, I felt like my granddad trying to program a VCR. Like I feel old for the first time and just want to stay. And we just want to make music. That's it. And if we can find people that help promote it, great. But it's like, the amount of stuff they want you to do afterwards it's alarming at times. And the fact that it's the norm and that if you're young at all, it's like, you don't know any different. And so I guess I'm officially the oldest guy in the room right now.
Well, you touched on something that I wanted to ask you about. I can only imagine. I think it was named the greatest song ever written of all time. Scientific poll.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard that or not, but yeah, that just came out recently. But do you ever feel pressure from the industry where it's like, hey, good job, now give us another one of those? Or do you feel more like the freedom to keep doing what you're doing, which you're doing really well?
There was probably a self-imposed pressure after years ago after Imagine blew up and it was like, oh no, I got to follow this up, and so it was the label never did that. If they did, I didn't hear about it. Like they were pretty cool about it. The good thing about your first song out of the gate being your career song is that you get a lot of freedoms to do what you want. And so we're very fortunate to have it be as successful as it was to where we're probably one of the few that we just tell them, hey, we'll hand the record in on this date. And the label sometimes will never hear it until they get it. And where that's rare, we try, that's kind of true. Like most time I usually let the cat out of the bag and want them to hear it anyway, because we're really close we've been with the same label, same booking agent, same manager this whole time. And so we're just friends, but they would leave us alone until we were ready for them to hear something. And that's the beauty of having Imagine do so well and so early on. But so, yeah, any of the pressure has been more on us or just self-imposed and, trying to stay relevant. I would say a few years ago, probably Welcome to the New, that album. Since then, we've been kind of a healthy place of not caring as much. And we do care, but not caring what radio or people say we should do next. We just we get to a point where we are excited and love the song. And then whatever happens once it leaves here or whatever is out of our hands. But I think I just saw a thing of the day where Prince was saying something about, he said, every artist would say that their song is a smash hit or a masterpiece before it ever leaves the studio because of how it made them feel. But then we hear critics and stuff and we start second guessing and going, oh, we should have done better. He goes, but it's that initial feeling of the second it's finished and that excitement of like, what were you just a part of? It's like, you've got to hold on to that because people have their opinions no matter what. It's pop music, meaning it's popular to the most people you're trying to reach the majority of the audience. That's so hard to do. And so, so we just hang on to that. We're just like, whatever happens after this, it's out of our hands. But we still remember that we loved that song.
Well, and obviously your music connects with people. The music, the lyrics, you guys have found something that really tugs at the heartstrings. And again, it points people to Jesus. And when I was listening to the new album, I was really moved by your lyrical declaration of faith in Jesus. It is not watered down. I mean, it is straightforward and direct. While listening to it, though, it also kind of made me think of the flip side of that, where today we see people in the music industry, authors, even close friends who are deconstructing or walking away from their faith. Bart, I wonder for you, what has kept your faith in Jesus strong and what has kept you in the church?
Gosh, I mean, the people around me for sure, whether it's band members or my wife and my kids, and it's, that's been a huge part of it. But it's like, I mean, I grew up in it, and the church kind of saved my life in a time that was really hard for me, like with an abusive father, stuff like that. And so, like, it made such an impression that in some ways it's like breathing. Like, I just can't imagine not being a part of it. Like I remember moving to Nashville and just trying to find a church home in that brief season just felt weird. It's like, it's like we all long to be a part of something and people that agree, and we need to be around that kind of community. And so it's never been one where I've had to remind myself, like, oh yeah, go to church or whatever you want to say that. But also it's man, I don't know. It's just, I from when Jesus changed my life as a teenager to becoming a parent, and the tragedy and the stuff that we've gone through, it just feels like there's always some kind of reminder, something that brings me back to what matters to me and what's changed my life. And you mentioned deconstructing, like the song "To Not Worship You" on the album was written out of a conversation with the band about people we know deconstructing, and us talking about how, man, I mean, I think we've all kicked the tires of our faith and asked why things happen to good people or whatever like that. I just never started an Instagram account because of it and made it a thing. But I'm like, even in those times when we have doubt, which we all do, it's like, how can we not, like, the moment we remember, oh, this is who God is, this is what he's done, this is how big he is. It's like, who are we to ever not worship him? And so that's, it's this kind of do this in remembrance of me. It's like I'm always reminded of things, of like how small I am and how big God is.
That's really good. Well, I want to kind of flip things on their head for a second, get a little less serious, but right. I'm introducing a new segment called Questions No One Has Ever Asked Bart. Okay. Still working on the name, a little rough there, but I'm hoping I can ask you some questions that no one has ever asked you in an interview.
Okay.
Let's see. First off, when you look at a set list, what song makes you think that your voice is in a lot of trouble?
Let's see. Lately, probably Even If. When I see that one closing in, I'm doing a systems check long before I get there, and we've done it long enough to where I can give the guys a look and they can drop it a half step like in 2 seconds. So we have an out if we need it.
That's great. How high does God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen rank on that list?
If we did it more often, it would be up there. But since we only do it every couple of years, it's I don't have to worry about that one that much.
And I just had to bring that up because you guys have written so many great songs. That thing is like near the top of my list of my favorite MercyMe songs. I mean,
oh, nice. That's awesome.
It's one of the greatest Christmas songs ever written, and definitely the best version of that song. I mean, it can be April and I'm listening to it. So awesome. I'm sure our listeners have heard it, but if you haven't, play it, crank it up, play it loud. So
my kids my kids call it the Batman song. They think the opening sounds like something from a Batman movie. Dun, 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 dun.
I'll never hear it the same way again. We've tried to replicate that at our church. It doesn't always work.
That's awesome.
Okay. On a completely different note, you are a music industry advisor for a group that's trying to bring MLB to Nashville. Mm-hmm. Bart, if you and your fellow advisors had a softball game, what position are you playing and where are you batting in the lineup?
I'm playing first base for sure. And then in the lineup, I don't know. I'm not as strong. I'd probably say the 5, 6, 7 spot, maybe. Like I can get on base or whatever, but I can't hit it like I used to.
Is it fair to say, like, because of these advisors, we can say you're collaborating with like Justin Timberlake and Darius Rucker on various projects
yes,
and things?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. We get together every Monday for coffee.
Well, you have spent a lot of time in vans and buses being on the road. For aspiring musicians, what is your number one tip for surviving the road?
Go to the bathroom before you leave is one.
Good parenting advice too.
Yeah. Take advantage of every truck stop for snacks. That's how I keep my girlish figure. And then just be flexible, man. Something's going to go wrong and somebody's going to not smell right. There's going to be something that goes, you just got to be flexible and like whoever you're traveling with. That's the biggest one.
Well, speaking of being on the road, you're about to hit the road with Chris Tomlin. If Chris pulls you aside and says, hey, let's do a cover of any song ever written, your choice, what are you choosing?
My choice? I don't know. I'm a massive ELO fan, and I would say, but we've covered most of those at some point already. But it would probably something like that. Like I guess that's a good question. Not sure what I'm trying to think of. It's Tomlin asking too. Let me think.
But his opinion doesn't matter. He's just there to play and sing.
I got you. I would let's see. I would probably do like a Mr. Blue Sky or something like that. Most likely, just something that's been a go-to of mine most of my life. And if people haven't seen them, your covers, your backstage covers that you did a few years ago on YouTube are incredible to watch. It almost makes me sick how you can just put something together in minutes like that, and it sounds so great. Yeah, they're incredibly corny, but I appreciate you saying that. But that's just blowing off steam. But we had to stop it because the bar kept getting raised and more people kept getting involved. And so, yeah. Well, I'm starting a petition to bring that back. So if anybody wants to sign on, you can follow me and we'll do that. Okay. Last question. This is a really important one here. Okay. The old saying goes, rumors are no fun. Bart, have you ever started a rumor about a retired NFL quarterback coming back to play for the Dallas Cowboys? Well, unintentionally, yes, I did. Well, I didn't think of it being a rumor, but yes, I did. I did post after Dak went down in the Cowboys. I posted Ben Roethlisberger on the head of a Dallas Cowboy, and I put it out there. And then I'm buddies with Ben Roethlisberger, and like literally the next day there was clickbait about how he's considering going to the Cowboys, and man, he blew me up. Bart, did you do this? I was like, no, I didn't do it. I just put it, just a joke or whatever. And so it's been an ongoing bit, and I'm always trying to get him into some kind of trouble. Yeah, and you say clickbait, like Sports Illustrated was reporting on this. Like, I mean, well, the clickbait was the headline was like Roethlisberger going to Cowboys, and the article was like seven options that will never happen, but they put that as the headline. Stirring up trouble. Yeah. Well, Bart, I appreciate you doing this. I do have to say, we had an interaction about 11 years ago on Twitter. We had a little bit of a friendly spat. It was when my Cardinals were playing your Rangers in the World Series. And during the World Series, we had a little back and forth. And I say friendly, it was genuinely friendly. But I declared I was not listening to another MercyMe song during the World Series. You responded and said you were not going to buy any of our curriculum or magazines during the World Series. So 11 years later, we can finally put this behind us. Yes. Mostly because neither one of our teams is any good right now. We're still playing, but I'm glad we can finally get over that hurdle. But I thank you so much for being here. Folks, the new album is called Always Only Jesus. It is so good. And like we said earlier, every song points to Jesus. Bart, congratulations on the new album, and thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Marianne, what was your favorite question David asked at the end?
I loved his question about tips for surviving the road.
I know what he said. I know, yeah. So,
and he said truck stops for snacks. I mean, literally, and I'm a foodie, you're a foodie. We're like truck stops, but I'll tell you what, truck stops can have some of the best tacos in the world.
Oh, they can. Absolutely. And again, every truck stop has your favorite travel candy, which we talked about in the past over those items.
Oh my
now, you know, my favorite was be friends with whoever you travel with. I mean, You don't want to get in an argument on the first concert stop of, a 20 stop tour. I mean, that would not be a good thing.
No, I can't fathom.
No.
I cannot fathom. I think one of the things I love that he said that I highlighted is two things. Number one, they really feel like they want their music to unify the body in a broken time. I don't know, know if you caught that, but I really love that. I'm like, yes, music can do that. Music has the power to do that. And we are operating in a time where the body is fractured, and they're writing songs that are helping unify the body. And I just thank you for saying that, Bart. That says so much about your heart, and your heart for your music.
I'll tell you something else that exudes his heart in a way that is incredible. And that is how popular this group is. I mean, they are, you don't get any more high on the pinnacle on where you can go. And yet for them, it's still all about Christ. They kept talking about, even the lyrics are Christ centric. This could easily, cause all kinds of pitfalls. And I'm thankful they got into an area that we are commonly seeing today called faith deconstruction.
Yeah.
And, this idea, of walking away from one's faith, picking apart that which we believe. And, here's some, he talked about 4 objectives in there, and here's what I would give you. We have objectives that we have based our organization on, all of our resources on. And I want to give these to you because I do want to just I want to challenge our listeners to be plugged into Christ the way Bart is talking about plugging in every song they write, everything they do, they give it to him. But we need daily time in the Word.
Yeah.
We've got to have that time. I heard something just this past week that said if a person reads 3 or more times in the Word of God a week, which, that should hopefully be our minimum. But they said 3 or more times a week will reduce the anger in your marriage, will reduce the chance for temptation on your weakest areas of temptation, and obviously bring a much more close intimacy with our Heavenly Father in our prayer time. And so engaging God's Word, when we engage God's Word, we also want to share about God.
Right.
And then we want to volunteer in our church. And then we want to find people that we can lean into and mentor, and find a mentor we can lean into and learn from.
Absolutely.
If we can do those 4 things, and by the way, we built an entire curriculum around it. We built a conference around it. This is the power of D6. And Bart, I'm just going to tell you, dude, you are a D6 guru in everything you've ever done. And these objectives are coming through in your life and in your work and in your humility. Man, I was blown away by that.
Yes. I think something that's stood out to me that he said that I think is very true in ministry leadership and parenting and marriage and all of those things is he said, as a musician, as a professional, they are constantly changing. The industry's changing. So they're having to adapt. And it specifically in the music industry, he said something about attention spans are shorter.
Yes.
And can I tell you, I read a statistic just this week that says that now our attention spans are as long as a goldfish. It's 8 seconds. That scares me. That scares me.
Yes.
But I like that he said that. And the takeaway in that statement is that, yes, the climate of ministry is changing. The climate of parenting is always changing. And that goes back to your first point, Ron. We can't do this apart from Christ. Truly, we've got to take Jesus at his own words. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
That's right.
It's a changing climate. Discipleship, maybe even, there's just so many variables adding to our dynamic as leaders, and we've got to trust him and go to his word. And it all centers back on Jesus. I need you to do this.
Yes.
Through me.
Yes. I'm going to give one more in there, and this is probably a non-spiritual takeaway in there, but an ethical one. He was talking about, they've been with, and I love this. Now, I'm not going to advocate this, but if you can do it, great. Same agent, same label, same manager, all the way through. That says something there in there. And I know that's not practical. You can't do that. And there was a day when I've got a Cal Ripken Jr. bat sitting right 6 feet away from me. And part of the reason why I love that is that same work ethic. He showed up every day, every game, same team. And I know we're in a new era, and same team, same loyalty doesn't work, but it is that work ethic. And that's what I want to bring out here, is that Bart described that their label trusts them and does not lean in over their shoulder asking to listen to their music, because they know that after all these albums, they're going to deliver quality and on time.
Yeah.
And I want to challenge listeners out there, be true to your word on delivering quality and timely work to the people who are expecting you to do it. That's a team performance. It's a whether you're on a staff at a church or you're in a workplace, you know, your reputation and Christ's reputation's on the line in our everyday life. And I just appreciated that. Just kind of resonate. I know it's one of those little things over there, but I noticed that when he was talking through that, and that's big. That's huge.
Absolutely. So, you know, doing faithful work matters. Faithful work matters. And I love that. I love that you honed in on that in this interview.
Yeah.
I am so excited about our interview next week. We hope you have a fantastic week. We hope that you will take this interview and think through and pray through how you can implement it in generational discipleship and in your leadership. And we cannot wait to talk next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.